Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Dr. Amber Silver, and I'm an assistant professor in the College of Emergency Preparedness, Homeland Security, and Cybersecurity. Today, on behalf of my co-authors, Derek Morrison and Jason Cradaville, I'm here to discuss the Virtual Operations Support Team at the University of Albany. So just to give you an idea of what the next 5 to 10 minutes or so will look like, I'll begin very briefly with some background and goals of the VOST, then transition into talking about our team composition and accomplishments, as well as operational procedures. We've had several notable events as part of the VOST. For today's talk, I will focus on Hurricane Laura, and then I will conclude with a brief discussion about student impact. Now, Virtual Operations Support Teams, or VOSTs, have existed in some capacity for over a decade now, both across the United States and abroad. They refer to a group of individuals, usually volunteers, who provide remote situational awareness through the perusal of social media content. Now, this just-in-time reporting provides emergency managers, first responders, and other interested parties up-to-date, on-the-ground information about emergent threats and local impacts. The VOST at the University of Albany has its origins in a directed study that was conducted in our college with an adjunct professor, whereby an undergraduate student took the concept of a VOST and then applied it in the university setting. And the goal was to create a student-driven, faculty-supervised initiative to support both the university, the college, and our community partners. Now, our VOST internship runs 3, sometimes 4 semesters every year, fall, spring, summer, and sometimes winter. It includes 4 to 6 students with a mixture of experience, training, background, and disciplines. For example, we have students in our emergency preparedness, homeland security, and cybersecurity concentrations, as well as students in informatics and information science. And we've been very fortunate to have students from the Department of Atmospheric and Environmental Sciences on our team as well. Now, these students can fulfill 1 or more roles as part of the program. The first role that a student will fill is that of a team member. That's someone who's involved with monitoring social media data and compiling reports. Next, a team member can transition to become a team leader after they've been with the VOST for 2 or more semesters. A team leader provides feedback on earlier drafts of the reports. They also answer questions from other team members, and they help acclimatize new members to the internship. Lastly, mentors are people who have been with the VOST program for multiple semesters. These tend to be senior students in their last semester of university. Sometimes we've had students who graduated who stay on for an additional term. And these mentors are people who have a less active role in monitoring social media and writing reports, and they have a more active supervisory role along with team members. So they're there as a point of contact to answer questions, to provide feedback, that sort of thing. And this layered approach, whereby at any term we will have people, brand new members, we'll have people who've been there for 2 or 3 terms, we'll have people who've been part of the VOST for even longer, helps address some of the bigger challenges associated with VOST, primarily high turnover, insufficient oversight, and sufficient schedule coverage. Now, the VOST at the University of Albany had its soft launch in December 2019 with a small cohort. And since that time, we've had 6 full cohorts of students, with a 7th cohort beginning just this spring. We've tracked over 20 incidents, compiled over 70 social media reports, and developed 1 after-action report. Now, most of the events that we do track are weather-related. Some notable events that we worked on were Hurricane Laura, Hurricane Delta, the New York State nor'easter, and then a smattering of smaller weather events, particularly winter weather, and then high precipitation events in the summer. We had 1 activation, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but essentially it occurred in March 2020 over COVID. Now, the Virtual Operations Support Team exists in 2 operational phases. The first is a steady state phase. This is when students are undergoing training, they're learning about social media and emergency management, they're learning the most effective ways to scrape data and how to write reports. During this time, students are maintaining situational awareness. So they're combing through social media, paying attention to trending keywords, accounts, tweets, that sort of thing, and keeping an eye out for the next potential event. The second operational phase is an activation. So what happens is that when our community partners, whether that's the college, the University at Albany, even the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, has an event that they think that they need a little extra coverage on, we move into activation mode, which is where our students are actively monitoring social media for a specific event. So let's say a winter storm. And they are providing information to our community partners that are relevant to their operational procedures, their goals, whatever have you. And so we establish a number of deliverables, and then we work to achieve those deliverables with our partners. Now, I know that this is a little bit difficult to see, but this is our social media report template. So our interns are compiling these reports 1 to 2 times a week. Think of these reports as taking the pulse of social media during steady state times. And so in terms of structure, our social media reports begin with a summary. So that's wrapping everything up in one section, because if an emergency manager or community partner only has a minute or 2 to read this report, we want to make sure that all of the relevant information is right there up front. The second section is a forecast or a significant events section. And what information is included in this really depends on the event itself. For weather events, this is where we provide an abridged, plain language forecast that highlights likely conditions and impacts at the local level. Next, we have a hashtags and keywords section, which is relatively straightforward. Then we have an engagement section. So this is where we're talking about the reach of particular tweets, because a tweet for one event might have 1,000 retweets, while a tweet for another event might have 50,000 retweets. And so it's putting this into relative perspective. And it's not just Twitter either. We also provide engagement information from a host of different platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, YouTube, and others. Lastly, we have a social media analysis section that's looking at, the why of the report. Not just what was shared, but why is it relevant? Why is it interesting? Or, how does it link back to lessons learned and research? Now, as I mentioned, most of the events that we pay attention to are weather related. And we're looking at weather events in New York State in particular, because that's where the University at Albany is located. But we also look at weather events more broadly, particularly for practice. So if it's a relatively slow time in New York State, we'll broaden our horizons and look at weather events elsewhere. An example of that is Hurricane Laura. So we began monitoring social media 72 hours prior to landfall in this event. At first, we were interested in understanding how forecasts were being perceived by end users, and whenever possible, how they're being acted upon. Now, the most notable tweet from Hurricane Laura came from the National Hurricane Center, where they stated that its storm surge would be unsurvivable. And something about that term, unsurvivable, made this tweet really gain traction. It was posted on August 26th, and during this time frame that we were monitoring social media, it had garnered over 11,800 retweets and almost 8,000 likes. Now, the Weather Channel picked that out. They quoted the National Hurricane Center's unsurvivable tweet. That accumulated 12,000 retweets and 19,000 likes. The prior tweets by the National Hurricane Center were saying that Hurricane Laura was life-threatening, extremely dangerous, devastating, and these tweets, again, gained traction in terms of retweets and likes. Now, what was also interesting with Hurricane Laura is pulling out the signal from the noise, so to speak. So at the same time Hurricane Laura was approaching the coast, preparing to make landfall. There was a lot of traction on social media from the Kenosha protests, as well as the Republican National Convention. And so it was a challenge for our interns to again separate that signal from the noise, to look at information that was trending about Hurricane Laura during all of these other trending events. And although the top hashtag on Twitter at the time was hashtag Hurricane Laura 2020, as the storm moved inland, it actually very quickly disappeared over the course of 12 to 24 hours. Essentially, it dropped off the trending list on social media. So then what? Well, after this, essentially like a 72-hour, 85-hour window was over, and Hurricane Laura had made landfall, and then the news moved on to the next story, as it was. Our interns then focused on lessons learned and potential ties to policy. So in the aftermath of that event, they looked at what were the biggest trending tweets or hashtags or information associated with the storm, and how does that potentially relate to policy and good risk communication or crisis communication theory. Now, in terms of student impact, we pride ourselves at the VOST at the University of Albany of having, salient benefits to our students. So the first is experiential learning. The VOST was student built. Students built it from the ground up. The faculty supervisors, they provided guidance and resources, but it was really the students who were figuring it out on the ground, so to speak, and that empowered them to make VOST their own and to carry it forward into their careers. Secondly, the VOST is interdisciplinary and theory driven. As I mentioned, we have emergency management students, homeland security students, computer science students, cybersecurity students, informatics students, like a whole host of students from different disciplines. And they're all working together, and they're sharing, disciplinary information, best practices, and learning as a group how to communicate effectively during a crisis. Thirdly is culture. As I mentioned, the VOST really was built from the ground up by students. And because students are working together to build and maintain team relationships, and especially in this entirely virtual environment, what we're seeing is that it's building a culture. And so, learning how to effectively collaborate within a virtual environment, it's going to be an important skill moving forward, particularly post-COVID. And lastly, in terms of the tangible gains that students take away from the VOST, well, it's really varied by student. So our interns are required to commit 10 hours per week to the VOST, or 160 hours per term. And in doing so, they are both receiving a 3-credit course towards their degree, while also fulfilling the internship requirements and partially fulfilling the training hour requirements for our CEHC students. In addition to fulfilling their degree requirements, however, VOST students are also taking away soft skills such as leadership and teamwork and working under tight deadlines. Furthermore, we are encouraging our students to work to their strengths in the program. For example, our atmospheric science students take the lead during weather events by providing up-to-date and locally relevant forecasts to our team and/or community partners, by helping to translate weather information to a non-technical audience, and by guiding our interns towards the kinds of information that they should be searching for on social media. So in that way, each of our interns is able to work towards their strengths. So thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out and contact me, whether that's about the virtual operations support team in general or the VOST at the University of Albany. I'd be delighted to speak with you.